of addiction. So today's topic is turning pain into purpose. Just to let you know who I am, my name is Ashley and I'm an addictions therapist. I'm also a regular therapist that specialise in trauma and childhood. I've overcame addiction, which I think is the most important thing, the qualifiers to be talking about addiction. I've also studied it and up until PhD level, and I've experienced friends and loved ones who've also dealt with it, so I understand addiction from every angle. I'm here to offer a space to chat about it. So today's topic is turning pain into purpose, and I've been a little bit apprehensive about talking about spirituality, but so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to talk about spirituality and religion because I don't think you need to be religious or spiritual to get over addiction. But one thing that did help was this idea that everything happens for a reason. And you can look at it through a spiritual and religious lens of this is my life purpose, or God has a plan, or whatever you want to call it. But you can also look at it through the lens of I've gone through something, or I'm going through something which is really difficult, but actually the difficulties I'm going into now is shaping me into the person I'm going to be, which means I get to come out differently and I get to turn this pain, which is addiction, and the trauma or whatever's driving the addiction into purpose, and I get to support other people. So this was really helpful to me. And I remember in my counselling training, we got taught that it was helpful to ask people what their religious or spiritual views were. And when I used to ask my clients, nearly all of them, because I work with men a lot, younger men, would say nothing. But if I change that question and ask people, do they believe in fate? I would say quite a few people, about 90%, said that they believed in fate. So it can be really good to think about when you're in the worst of it. Just think about there is an opportunity that this is going to be building me into the person I'm going to be. And maybe it is part of your purpose. Maybe you're religious or you are spiritual. And if you are, lean into that. But if not, just look at the fact that you're going through something that is so difficult and you're actually forced to learn about the level of grit and determination you have as a person, and you get to build resilience, and you can absolutely turn that into purpose. You can actually use the resilience that you're having to do to get over addiction to drive your life in the best direction possible. Because if you can fight that fight, you can take anything on the chin, I'm telling you now. Hi, Poopy's Boutique. Hi, Roxy, how you doing? Oh, hi, SR, nice to see you again. It's always good to see familiar faces. So I'm talking about turning pain into purpose. Obviously, for me, I've turned my addiction into purpose in the sense that I'm doing this with you guys. I've decided to study it and I'm writing a book on it, but you can also do it in a more broad sense. Bobby, totally agree. It gives you so much power to yourself getting over addiction. Yeah, I did not know how strong of a person I was until I got through that. And it is actually undeniable. If you can get through addiction and come out the other side, it is undeniable that you are a resilient, strong person. And I think it's really important that we take a minute to take stock of that. And actually even being in addiction and still turning up every day takes massive strength, because it's such a scary, isolating place to be in. And if you can just keep showing up and keep having that hope that I'm going to get out of it and keep trying to get out of it, that's so great. Another thing is, I spoke to someone the other day, and obviously I don't ever want to give details of conversations I have, but on a broad sense, one of the things that was touched on is sometimes it feels helpless, especially if you're relapsing. But if you can think of it like, okay, I'm strong enough to think that I want to do this again, even though it's really difficult. But the relapse, I learned that it didn't work. Whatever I was doing didn't work. So instead of feeling defeated, see it as an opportunity to think, okay, that didn't work. Let's go back to the drawing board. What's going to help us in addiction recovery the next time? I'm going to see what people are saying. What's my name? It's Ashley. Ashley Bloxham. Poopy's Boutique. Found out the best news. My abuser from over 21 years ago has passed. I feel like I want to celebrate. That sounds like it's been massive closure for you. I think that's one of the things with just any kind of healing from abuse is we're trying to get closure from a situation. And it sounds like you've had that closure today. It's a bit like when a perpetrator gets sentenced. It's really important for the victims that happens. So yeah, I can really understand that. And for people who's experienced abuse and they've not been able to get that closure, because I've experienced abuse and I haven't been able to get the closure in a very physical way. Something that you can do to kind of get that closure is you can write a letter to them, or you can sit there and imagine what it's called, the empty chair. I've spoke about this before, but for somebody who hasn't been on my live, if there's somebody who's abused you, you can pretend they're sitting in front of you and you can say what you would want to say to them. Or if that feels too triggering, you can write a letter and try and get closure that way. But I think what Poopy's Boutique is talking about is that sense of relief that you get when you finally put something to bed. And I think that can be really helpful, especially with abusers. And let's be real, there are a lot of studies which show that there is a correlation between abuse and addiction. It's a form of self-medication. So I can see why that's been really, really, trying to think of the word, just it felt like huge relief for you. Roxy is saying, by the way, Roxy, shout out to my moderator, it's brilliant. Poopy's Boutique, I know how that feels. It's strange when an abuser passes because it's morbidly liberating. My father abused me and that's how I felt when he took his life. Yeah, and I think this is the thing as well. I think it's, so in the counselling world, this will be called complex grief and loss. So if a client came to us and they're experiencing grief and loss, that would be classed as quite a straightforward case. But when you've got abuse in the mix, it's a really complex situation, because I think with any grief and loss, we feel a whole host of emotions. But when it's somebody who's been a perpetrator, it's an even more complex set of emotions. Roxy, what would you say was helpful to you for Poopy's Boutique in that time? So who else is saying, after all these years of looking over my shoulder, I no longer have to. Yeah, I can imagine that feels so great for you. And I think that's the thing. This is the thing why there's such links between it with past trauma and addiction, is because even once an abuse is finished, unless we've been able to process that abuse properly, it's still living in our nervous system. And Poopy's Boutique's talking about this wonderfully, about that always looking over your shoulder. And I think that is one of the things with abuse, is that, yeah, it might have happened at a certain point in our lives, but if we're not able to process it properly, it's still continuing in our nervous system. And this is something, even I've had to deal with. And I'm not going to get too much into my abuse. It's something that I've dealt with. But I've dealt with abuse, and then it's been rearing its head in relationships, and it's almost like the abuse is continuing. It's still having power over us. So I've had to really work to get that closure. And it's a really difficult job to do. But if we're not dealing with stuff like that, and we're not able to get that closure and calm our nervous systems, then we are going to be more susceptible to addiction, because the addiction substance or behaviour is going to be calming our nervous systems for us. Because like Poopy's Boutique said, it is that feeling of always looking over your shoulder. It's really sad. And I'm sorry for anyone in the group who's went through that. But I think it is an important topic. I'm almost a little bit on edge talking about it. But it is an important topic because often we see addiction as a moral failure. And actually, if you look at research, a lot of it says that it is linked in with trauma. And I've spoke about this study before, but there was this largest study on heroin users found that nearly all of them had experienced abuse. So I think it is an important topic because it allows you to realize that actually the addiction isn't the problem. It's not a moral failing. It's actually a solution to managing trauma or managing huge life difficulties or undiagnosed mental health disorders. And actually, it's not something to shame ourselves for. It's actually pointing to the fact that there's something else going on underneath which we need to address. Right. Yeah, VJ says, so sorry that happened to you girls. Yeah, I'm really sorry for everyone who's went through that as well. It's kind of like what I said in the beginning, you know, about you can turn your pain into power. And I think we can't change what's happened in our past, but as somebody who's dealt with abuse and been able to successfully work on it, I think it is something that if we work on it and we start to work on the shame and we work on dissecting it and healing our nervous systems, again, it's one of them things where we can start to reflect and think, do you know what it is? I've got through that, I can get through anything. I saw this quote where it said, you've survived 100% of all your bad days. And I think that can be really great, and just trying to get that closure and working out how to heal the trauma means that you don't have to take that into your future. All right, let's see what people are saying. VJ, abuse is always a problem, but speaking out seems to help. Yeah, I've got to say, guys, I've felt very on edge. I don't know if anyone's even noticed that. I felt a little bit angsty talking about it. And I think it's because we're so conditioned to not talk about it. But actually, it is really common. I think it's a lot more common than as a society would like to admit. And as a counsellor, I see it coming through the door all the time. But even statistics show that a lot of people are experiencing it. And I can see myself like... But it does help talking about it. And I think as a society, we do shy away from talking about it. And I can even sense that in my own nervous system, that I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable around it. Because we think about trigger warnings and stuff like that. And we think about, oh, it's something that we just need to crack on with and not talk about. But actually, I think VJ is 100% right. We do need to talk about it because a lot of people experience it. And especially with addiction, one of the first things I'll be looking at as an addictions counsellor is what's went on in the past, because that's going to be giving keys to why are you struggling with addiction. Because let's be real, I don't think anybody is going to be like, oh, that looks fun, sign me up for a little bit of addiction, please. There's obviously something that's causing it. VJ, for sure it's self-medication. 100% it's self-medication, and all of the research suggests that. But it's something that for some reason as a society, and you know, the war on drugs doesn't help that, but as a society we shame people who's got addiction, we shame ourselves for having addiction, and it's a symptom. It's like if you had blood in your stool, if you went to the doctors, they wouldn't say, oh, you've got blood in your stool, that's your fault, and just focus on the blood in the stool. They would be thinking, why is there blood in the stool? What's happened to cause that? And they would then look at what's going on underneath the surface. Yet with addiction, even though all of the research says it's a symptom, we still treat it like it's the problem and it's the person who's got the addiction's fault, and it's actually not at all. Elsa Walk Sky, hi, nice to see you again. Good morning. Jay, hi. It's made my day. I'm glad that your day's been made, Pooey's Boutique. $1 billion worth of game. Where did you get your degree? So I got 2 degrees. When I got sectioned, because I've got bipolar, for those who don't know it is, I got put at, I was feeling like lucid by this point, like I was tapped into reality, and I got pulled into into the office with a psychiatrist and a few healthcare professionals. And they said, what do you do? And I said, I'm a counsellor. And they said, where do you get your degree? And I said, which one? And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, well, which counselling degree? And they were like, oh, you've got 2 counselling degrees, do you? Made a few notes and then just changed the topic, and I had to stay in for another 2 weeks. But I legit do have 2 counselling degrees. So one of them was in Northumbria University, and I didn't realise it didn't have a placement option for it. Element. So you have to be a counsellor, you have to practice with clients in a placement, and it didn't have that option. So then I went on to do my master's in addiction, because I wanted to be an addictions counsellor, and partway through my master's realised that my first counselling degree wouldn't make us eligible to be a counsellor. So then when I was doing my master's, I actually went back and did another degree, which was an FDA, and that was at Tyne Met, which is part of Sunderland. So both in the northeast. Chip Brown, good morning. Morning to you. And I do not feel good looking, guys. You said, oh, good morning, good looking. I am so unwell. I've got 2 cold sores. My son is chinders, and I've got like a fat lip. I've got makeup on, but underneath I've got like bags and everything. I've been so unwell. Oh, but I'm here. That's the main thing. If you can get through addiction, you can get through alive when you're unwell. You should leave the SUDS and MH to the professionals. What do you mean SUDS and MH to the professionals? I don't know what that means, $1 billion. But the fact I don't know what you mean probably means I should leave it to the professionals. Sandro, I gamble for a living. Hi. So the thing with addiction is, addiction is defined as if you have a problem. So, wait there. Addiction is if you have a problem that you want to stop, that you can't stop. So this is where I think it's a bit of a grey area. So if you are doing that for a living and you enjoy your job and you're great at it and it's not causing you any problems, then that's great for you. If you can make a living out of that, that's fantastic. But it's a bit like if you look at drinking. So drinking alcohol is huge at a societal level. Yet you'll have, say, I don't know, 80% of people can have a drink without it being problematic. And then you've got 20% of people have a problematic relationship with alcohol. So it's not that everybody's got an addiction to alcohol, it's just a portion of people have got a problem with it and they want to stop and they can't stop. So I think that's really important, because I think often we diagnose people as being an alcoholic or a gambler or whatever. And actually if they're drinking alcohol frequently and they're fine with it and it's not causing issues and they can stop if they want to, it's not a problem. So yeah, I suppose it depends, Sandro, if that's an issue for you or not. If you're making money out of it and you enjoy it, then great. Right. Sounds like Sadia Khan. I don't know who Sadia Khan is. I'll have to have a look at them. Thanks, Roxy, saying she'll answer you, bro. I hope I have answered you and not missed you, whoever it is. Yeah, I try my best to get through comments. If anyone's got any questions around addiction or mental health, I'm a therapist and I'm just happy to answer any questions. So do fire them at us and I'll do my best to get through them. But if I don't get through a comment, Roxy trying to answer some. And if not, just comment it after the live on any of my content, because I answer all my messages. Right, inspirational ambivert. Nice to see you again. I love how people are coming back. It's a little community. Childhood trauma. And thanks for the likes, guys. I'm seeing people are giving likes. If you could subscribe, that would be helpful as well. Right, inspirational ambivert. Childhood trauma. Most struggle to open Pandora's box and avoid trauma via addictions. Could be via drugs, medication, work, being busy all the time. Yeah. This is the thing. I think we think addiction is solely just around drugs and alcohol, but it's not. It's, if you think of it like escapism, you know, I've been having to be very careful that I'm been boundaried with myself around this, because I'm doing a lot of research around YouTube, and I'm coming on my lives and I'm replying to comments, and I'm having to be very boundaried with myself, because I am aware that it can slip into an addiction. Because I think, actually, to caveat what Inspirational Ambivert said, I've worked on all of my trauma. Look, I'm not claiming to be healed, but I've worked on enough of it. But I also have neurodivergence, so that is another reason as well why people can struggle with it. But the majority of neurodivergence does stem from childhood trauma. So, but yeah, by the way, Inspirational Ambivert, if anyone's interested, does a lot of content on their channel. You should check it out. It's really cool. It's around exactly what he's talking about, how to heal trauma and what's going on. It's really helpful. But yeah, it is. He's so right. Addiction is a manifestation of something else going on, and actually we can use it as, again, think of it like the blood in the stool. You wouldn't ignore that, and instead it can be an opportunity to work out what's going on underneath. So if you're struggling with addiction and you're simply thinking, this is just me who's got an addiction because I'm failing as a human being, instead reframe that and say, okay, this is a symptom. It's like blood in the stool. What is going on underneath? And use it as an opportunity to find out, is the childhood trauma, is the, as Inspirational Ambivert said, has there something else going on underneath? That might have been bullying, maybe you're feeling disconnected. And even if you're in addiction recovery, if you start to get hit with cravings, again, use it as an opportunity to think, okay, this is a symptom, what's the problem? And let's find a better solution than the addiction. $1 billion worth of games. So my counselling, I've got two degrees in counselling. So one was in childhood in counselling, and then the other one was just in person-centred therapy. But in both, I learned loads of different counselling modalities. In my first degree, I specialised in addiction. The second one was more broad. So I hope that answers your question. VG, I feel like I'm giving a CV. Yeah, I'm on interview. Have I got the job? $1 billion worth of game. Have I passed the interview? VG, certainly past experiences and trauma are a big culprit. Absolutely, 100% is. And I think childhood is a very good place to start. I would say about 98% of any client that comes through the door for me, and bear in mind, I specialise in addiction, but I've also worked with veterans. I've covered all kinds of different issues which have came through the door, and I'd say about 98% of them has stemmed from childhood. So I think childhood is a really good place to start if you're trying to work out where's your addiction came from. And I think just do a timeline, go back to childhood, map it out, what's went on. And if there's big things that have went on, I would say do this with a therapist or somebody who's trauma informed. Inspirational Ambivert, the hard road will take you home. Yes, it will. I think this is one of the things as well where it's very simple for me to sit here and go, oh, the reason why you've had an addiction is because of your childhood or because of your trauma. Let's be real, it's not as simple as that. Facing trauma, facing issues that we've had in the past isn't an easy thing to do. And this is why it's so important that we're doing it with the right people. And actually, one of the issues with addiction is when I went into counselling, I realised there was very few counsellors who do addiction and trauma. And the reason why is because if you take the addiction away and deal with the trauma at the same time, then what you're going to find out is dealing with trauma means that you lean heavily into your addiction, because it is so painful opening Pandora's box. It's not easy to sit there and relive pain that you've went through. So I would say, if you think, actually, okay, I'm picking up what she's putting down, yes, there is trauma in my past, I would say a good thing to do is not necessarily start by delving headfirst into the trauma. I would say what's the most safer way to do that is to learn how to regulate your nervous system and learn how to deal with the somatic part of the trauma first, so like your body. And a great book for that is The Body Keeps the Score. But any somatic healing, so like tapping, learning how to just calm your nervous system, so learning about how fight or flight works. And if you learn about how fight or flight works, you can learn how to deactivate fight or flight, learn how to just breathe. So one of the best things we can do for anxiety is, one, pay attention to what anxiety feels like, and then two, flip it on its head. So when we have anxiety, you'll notice your breath goes really shallow and fast. So do the opposite, breathe slow and breathe out longer than you're breathing in. So yeah, try and be aware, okay, there's something going on underneath, which means I'm going to have to face it. But let's first make sure I'm in the right headspace to face it. So nervous system, also learn and love yourself, which I know sounds so woo-woo, but love is the antidote to addiction. Trauma is a special cert not connected by addiction. What do you mean by trauma is a special cert not connected by addiction? I don't know what you mean. Could you expand on that? Right, I'm going to scroll around. I'm going to go just pick comments at random so everyone's got a fair chance. So Roxy's saying, VJ, that's actually very mature. I'm going to go see what VJ's saying. Right, meds can be addictive. I found that I am the type of person who has no interest in medications. I do it because it helps me, but I have dropped meds called not a good idea though. Side effects can be a nightmare. Yeah, Roxy's the person to speak about this. So one of the... We talk about drug addiction as in we think of illegal substances, but actually there's subscribed drugs are just as bad on the nervous system. We're putting chemicals into our system. So Roxy's actually got a lot more knowledge on this, my moderator, and I'm sure they'll message you, but I've actually been addicted to quetiapine. So for those who don't know what a quetiapine is, it's a prescription medication for bipolar. And I was really apprehensive when they put us on it when I was sectioned. And I remember saying to the psych that I wanted to speak to a psychiatrist because I've already experienced addiction and overcame it, and I didn't want to be addicted to prescription meds. In the end, they talked us into having them. And it actually zombified us. So like I just wasn't myself. And I'm a parent, so it was getting to the point where I was just like an absolute zombie. I was struggling to parent at my best, and I forgot to pick my medication up, and I noticed I was a complete different person. So then I thought, right, I can't be on medication, because it's the whole reason why I'm on meds is so that I can be the best version of myself to be a parent. And actually, I'm just being an awful parent. So then I ended up coming off my meds, and I ended up going cold turkey. And I've got a friend who's overcame heroin abuse, where you've experienced the withdrawals of physical addiction, and she said you are going cold turkey, and like my bones were hurting off as rushing that much, like they were in pain. I couldn't sleep. I was getting hot and cold shakes. It was horrible. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. The side effects can be a nightmare. The side effects when you're on them, and the side effects of withdrawal. But also, what Roxy talks a lot about is actually using prescription meds, just being addicted to them, because we were having conversations about how it's actually really common for young people to take prescription meds, and he was saying how it's glorified in music. So prescription meds is something we don't talk about enough, and I think that's probably because it's something that we're just getting doled out left, right and centre with no questions asked. Right, let's go to another question, see what people are saying. All right, what do I say your name? OW, I'm going to call you. OW, good morning. I finally caught a live streaming. I stopped smoking since Saturday because of you. That's amazing. I implemented the love you yourself mentality. Thank you so much. Oh, that has made my day. I am so glad that's been helpful to you. I'm so glad you've been able to make a live stream. Yeah, I learned to love myself first, and it's honestly was the massive difference between being able to quit addiction and not. I've successfully quit alcohol, which wasn't an addiction, but it was definitely a problematic relationship, and I found it so much easier than anything else. I've also been quitting guys, doom scrolling. Me and somebody on me lives or RHS made a pact that we're going to keep each other accountable, and he hasn't been on the live since, but that's been really helpful. So someone keeping us accountable has been helpful, but again, I found it quite easy just to lean into things that I love, and yeah, being kind to myself every time I've wanted to. I've just been kind. What else has been helping you, OW? By the way, just need to say as well, stopping smoking since Saturday is a massive achievement. You're outperforming me because I've not successfully been able to stop smoking, but I am going to be in 2 weeks, so I'll let you know how it goes. But it's so hard every time I've tried to stop. I think it's been one of the most sticky addictions I've had, that's for sure. Right, Bobby, when dealing with addiction, it's hard to know where to get help or what kind of help. Absolutely agree. Bobby, are you struggling with addiction at the moment? Because if you are, I've still got some spots for an addiction group. I'm doing 2 now because I've filled 1, and it's going to be starting in a couple of weeks. You absolutely are welcome to join that. It's free of charge, and I can do a free one-to-one with you as well to get a little game plan. So if you are, Bobby, or anybody who's listening needs some addiction support, if you're in active recovery or active addiction, just comment on any of my content and I'll offer that for free. Right, VJ, I suffered from anxiety and ultimately ended up with going to a doctor. Originally, I thought I had depression, but not until my anxiety was dealt with did I end up controlling my depression. Yeah, I think that's the thing. So if you think of anxiety and depression, guys, is a form of fight or flight. So fight is the anxiety, we're getting pumped up, we're raring to go. So that anxiety is just a constant state of fight or flight. And depression is more freeze and fawn. So they're all, you've got fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And they're all survival mechanisms. And depression's more freeze and fawn. It's just that really low mood, but it's all stems from it. So as I've said in this live, if you think about anxiety, addiction as the solution, not the problem. If you think about, and the problem is usually trauma or undiagnosed mental health disorders or both. So if you think of that as the problem, and then that manifests as being in constant state of fight or flight or freeze or fawn, which is anxiety, depression, or mental health disorders, and then the addiction is the medication. So if we're struggling with any kind of mental health, it's not something that needs to necessarily be medicated, although I'm not against medication. Instead, it's an invitation to look at why have I got struggling with mental health? What is causing the mental health? So even a lot of the mental health disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar, although they've got genetic components, they are activated, which is epigenetics. They're activated in trauma or chaotic childhoods, instability. And let's be real, as a generation, we are traumatized. So, look at boomers. If you're a boomer, you would have been dealing with corporal punishment. That was normal. That's it now classed as abuse. So that is trauma. Even as millennials, we were left to cry it out as baby. That's neglect, generational trauma. So it might not be as straightforward as we've had physical abuse or emotional abuse. It might be that it's more of a generational trauma. Either way, we need to deal with it. Right, let's scroll around and just pick something. Jamie's saying, God is the answer always. I'm glad that worked for you, and I'm sure there's someone who needs to hear that. Although I will argue, and I'm spiritual. I'm not trying to say that what you're saying is wrong. But I will argue, there's somebody who did a podcast a couple of days ago, which I watched, and she said, even if you don't believe in a higher power, believe in the miracle that is life. Like, the chances that you are living and breathing here is absolutely insanely crazy. So even if we can just get on board with the fact that life is a miracle, that is helpful, because it gets us to think, you know what it is, I only get one life, and that can be extremely motivating. Someone said, thanks so much to Roxy. Yeah, Roxy's amazing. I don't know what Roxy's been doing, but that's my moderator. Bulldog, I feel with PTSD, but I did 7 combat tours in the United States Army. Do you? Yeah, Bulldog, I used to work with head of veterans, and it's so unnatural, the level of trauma that you're putting yourself through serving your country. And like, first of all, mass respect for that, like mass respect, because I couldn't imagine the level of bravery. And I just have honestly, it makes me get quite sad actually when I think about lads putting themselves out there to protect our country. So first of all, mass respect for you. But yeah, it's highly understandable that you've struggled with PTSD. And Bulldog, is it something that you've managed to deal with? Because I actually know an amazing trauma therapist who works with PTSD, and I did some work with her around my PTSD, which was for sexual abuse, so it's different, but PTSD presents the same, and it was actually life-changing. So I can put you in touch with them if that's helpful. Just let us know. Jonas, I still really want to be in the group, and I'm sorry I didn't reply on email. I just felt embarrassed. Don't feel embarrassed. You've got to remember, there is no judgment here. I am in no position to judge anyone, and like, honestly, so just send us another email. It's not started yet. Let's see what so many people are saying. Proud of Bobby. I'm 4 years off H. Also proud of Bobby. That is a massive achievement. The thing with H as well is it's not just physically addicted, like chemically addicted. Come on, Ashley. It's not just psychologically addictive, it's physically addictive. So that the level of grit and determination that must have took you is like next to none. What would you say to people who are listening that helped you, Bobby? And also, so what would you say was the hardest thing about it for you, and how you tackled that? Just to anyone who's listening, I know that that's like a huge addiction to get over. Oh, Roxy said like the live. Yeah, please like the live or subscribe. That is so helpful. I'm happy to sit here day in, day out and talk to you, but if you could do that, would help. RRB, I learned about doom scrolling yesterday. When you say you learned about it, what do you mean? What did you learn about it? Let us know. My friend is with me. She is day 8 Norwegian. She's absolutely amazing. Shout out to the friend who's on day 8 Norwegian. Do you know what it is? My friend's also on day 8 of Norwegian. And honestly, they've absolutely smashing it, because this is the hardest part. And I don't say that to deter you. I say that to motivate you, your friend, because this is where you're really in the trenches. But this is the part where if you just keep pushing through every craving, Every time you feel like I'm going to give up, every time you feel low, you do something positive for yourself. This is the part that you're really going to be grateful for. And you'll start to notice, so you're on day 8, so that means you've just entered a third of the way towards your dopamine start turning back on. So in 3 weeks after quitting addiction, what you'll find is you start to get dopamine in everyday life. So I don't know about people who's already recovered. Let us know your experience. But my experience of it was I was getting like rushes all over, you know, like little, I don't know how many people have done pills here, but we're in an addiction group. But it was almost like ecstasy rushes, or like the kind of rush you get, you know, when you listen to your favourite band when they're live or something like that, and you get these tingles. I started getting that from sunsets or watching a film that I loved. And that's because what happens is your brain starts to reset. So you're starving yourself from dopamine at this point. So day 0 to week 3, you're getting 0 dopamine. And what happens is when we're flooding our brains with dopamine through whatever addiction it is, whether it's doom scrolling 24/7, gambling, weed, heroin, whatever it is, we're flooding our brains with dopamine, and then all of a sudden we remove that. And because our brains have been flooded with dopamine, it actually downregulates the receptors. So you'll notice in active addiction, the only time you feel elevated and that sense of joy is when you're engaging in the addiction. And actually life outside of the addiction feels a bit flat and a bit grey and a bit... Ugh. And that's because your dopamine receptors are downregulated to cope with the amount of dopamine you get from drugs and alcohol, etc. So now you've removed the weed, you'll notice for the next 3 weeks, everything feels shit. You're a little bit emotional, you're just feeling very flat. But after 3 weeks, your brain starts to upregulate dopamine from everyday life, and that grey cloud that was over everything outside of weed will start to lift, and you'll start to feel brighter, and it's actually a really nice feeling. And then that'll charge you through the rest of your addiction recovery. Right, I'm going to scroll through and see what other random people have said. I'm trying to give people a fair chance. If I don't answer any of your comments, feel free to question after the live on any of my content, and I'll reply there. Brian, any addiction, most alcohol people I've known 14 to 21 days and they'll snap on you. Yeah, and that's that 14 to 21 days, like I said. Anybody who's dealing with somebody who's in active recovery, really bear with, because 3 weeks, they're just not getting any sense of joy in their life. It's really hard. And their brain chemistry is completely messed up. And if that's you, just be so kind to yourself and just remind yourself, just keep going through. If you're on day 8, you've done a third of it. You're in the second third of it, and you can absolutely do this. Dale, are those tattoos a cope too? These are just... So that's, if anybody doesn't know, the semicolon is, it's a sign for mental health and addiction. It's meant to represent a full stop. It's not a full stop. It's the end of a chapter and the start of a new chapter. And that's the thing with addiction. You are closing out a chapter and you get to reinvent yourself, because let's be real, your whole life revolved around addiction for a certain period of time, and now it doesn't. So you get to decide what is your life going to revolve around now. And I would say be very intentional with that. Say, okay, I'm going to have to reinvent myself because I was an addict and now I'm not. Now I'm recovered from that. So who is Ashley Bloxham now? And you get to decide. And that's a really exciting and nerve-wracking thing. DD, weed is not physically addictive. Facts. Well, it depends what form you're smoking it in it, because if you're smoking weed, then you actually throw nicotine into it, and then it is physically addictive. If that's the only time you smoke nicotine. If you smoke outside of it, then obviously you've still got the nicotine addiction. So if somebody is dealing with weed addiction, then but they only smoke weed it's like in a joint, the first thing I'd say is try and get rid of as much of the nicotine as possible, so reduce that down. It's not chemically addictive by itself though. DD is absolutely right. It is psychologically addictive, and that is if you're susceptible to addiction. Like I say, it depends on the person. Some people can go and drink alcohol and they can take it or leave it, and some people are addicted to it. So it's very individual. I would say though, the problem is it's a game of Russian roulette. So you might not feel addicted to it now, but then you might get down the line and realise, oh shit, I actually do have a problem. And then you'll realise it is a very big problem. So it's really individual, and it's a kind of a game of Russian roulette if we're doing something every day. But like I say, I'm never here to judge. If somebody smokes weed every day and they enjoy it, that's great for you. But then if you're somebody who's struggled with it and it's ruined your life, it's a very different story. Bulldog. My PTSD is a daily battle. Hell, I've retired out the army 17 years ago. I also served 17 years, 7 tours. But war sites suck, and I won't lie, I did 4 tours in Iraq and 3 tours in Afghanistan, so yeah. Bulldog, do you want to send us, if you want a message, I can't be a therapist because that's unethical, but I'm more than I've worked with veterans, and I'm more than happy to have a one-to-one support to try and get you in the right support, because of course your PTSD is a daily battle. Like 7 tours, 27 years. I think something that people who don't know much about the army don't realise is what happens is you go in, I assume you went in when you were joined when you were 17, 18. What a lot of people don't realise is a lot of people are going into the army or into the military services, and they're actually getting trained on how to protect our country, and that's happening from a young age when their brains wiring and firing. So you're getting trained to push down your emotions, and then you're putting you in PTSD situations, basically situations which are likely to cause trauma, and then you're ending it, and whilst you're in the army, you're surrounded by all of these people. It's a camaraderie ship. You've got all these other men and with some women who are there to support you, and then all of a sudden you go into Civvy Street and all of that's gone, and you're wired up not to deal with your emotions, and it's an absolute nightmare. I used to work for a veteran charity, and you're not the only person going through it, but there is a lot of services, and I'll try my best to support you if you're wanting that. And I used to specialise in trauma as well. So if you want that, Bulldog, just comment on any of my content and I'll see what we can do. Because I don't want you going through that alone, and you absolutely don't deserve to be dealing with your PTSD every day, especially considering that's came from serving your country. So people like me can sit here talking about this. Right, let's scroll around and see what else people are saying. I'm going to go to the middle. VJ said, so sorry, I have a form of PTSD from childhood trauma, but I can't imagine what it's like going to going PTSD from war. Yeah, I can't imagine. Like I say, I've had PTSD, but I can't imagine what that's like. And yeah, I agree. I am so sorry that you're going through that. Oh, Bulldog said, I've already liked and subscribed you. Seem like an amazing lady. Thank you, Bulldog. You seem like an amazing man. I assume you're a man. I shouldn't really assume that there's women in the army as well. RB, doom scrolling that consumes negative and distressing news that comes online, especially from a handheld device. Yeah, that's the problem with algorithms. It is distressing, and I've stopped watching the news. I make sure that my I've quit doom scrolling recently. I allow myself 45 minutes when my son's going to bed, but I've actually been trying to get rid of that recently. The last 2 days I've been watching a podcast. But yeah, I stopped watching the news because it's fear-mongering. I know that's going on in the world, but our nervous systems aren't great with dealing with threats that we can't resolve. So if you think of it like we're constantly getting information about this is going on in the world, that's going on in the world. And if we can't resolve that, then we're triggering fight or flight with no closure, which is what happens with PTSD, by the way. It's where our brains are constantly reliving the same thing. Our nervous system's constantly reliving the same thing, so we don't get the closure. So yeah, it is really important to be aware what we're consuming, and just be aware. A way to check is if after we're doom scrolling, how are we feeling? Are we feeling heightened, or are we tense? Do we feel like contracted? Is our jaw tense? Then that's a sign that whatever we're consuming isn't helpful. Poopy's Boutique, do I want some pasta? 100%. Poopy's Boutique is my best friend, and I've been really unwell. I don't know if anyone noticed, but who's my regulars, but I didn't come on live on Wednesday because I've been so unwell. And this is how lush my support network is. She's been dropping off pasta for us. She's been cooking and dropping it off. She's been doing little food shops for us. I've got to say, this is another thing in addiction recovery and mental health. It's so important that you've got a positive vibe tribe around you. And I would not have been able to get through my addiction recovery if it wasn't for my two besties. Right, let's see what other people... Oh, any addiction. Most alcohol people I've known... Oh, I've already said that. 14 to 21 days and they'll snap on you. Yeah, I've already answered that. But yeah, them 21 days are so crucial in addiction recovery. Let's see what else other people are saying. It's not real. I have an addiction to Cadbury's chocolate fingers. Yeah, sugar isn't look, sugar's a really difficult addiction to deal with. It's one I've had to deal with. And it's one that I've got to constantly be careful with, because we can't remove sugar from... The thing with ketamine is, that was my addiction, my drug of choice, is when I made the decision to stop having ketamine, I could quite easily remove myself from it. So heroin is a hard addiction to get over. But one thing I'd say about heroin is similar to ketamine. You can say, okay, I know it's really difficult, but I'm going to block the numbers. I'm going to remove myself from them circle of friends. I'm not saying it's easy, so please don't take that as an insult. But similar to ketamine, you can just remove yourself. There's certain addictions that you can't. Alcohol. So I'm having to learn to be around people who drink without drinking. Sugar. You go to the shops and it's there. Alcohol. You see alcohol everywhere. And it's really hard. Now, I get that it's not real, might just be having me life and saying that they're addicted to chocolate fingers. But as somebody who's had to get over a sugar addiction, it's really bloody difficult, because you're constantly having to check yourself before you wreck yourself. It is doable though, guys. Right, inspirational ambivert. I used to quit, then I'd fail, quit, then fail so many times. It took me years to develop the willpower to come away from my toxic behaviours and friendship groups. Yeah, I don't know anyone who's quit first time. And I literally don't know anyone. I mean, please do let us know if you're one of those rare individuals. But yeah, I don't know anyone. And I think if we recognise that that's part of the process, it's easier to say, okay, I fell off the wagon. That's part of the process. this happens to everyone. Let's pick ourselves up, because everybody who has recovered successfully from any toxic behavior or substance abuse has went through this process and they've came out the other side. So I can too. And it's about not shaming yourself when you relapse, but rather think about, okay, what did I learn? What's the lesson? And like inspirational Amber Vert has said, friendship groups. A good thing to look at is, who am I surrounding myself with? Have I got friends like I've spoke about who are dropping off pasta because I'm unwell and doing me food shop? Or have I got friends who are not helpful to my recovery? Right, I'm going to go down. Dustbuster. I was an addict for 17 years. Meth, coke, other pills. I literally had to change my thinking, my job, my friends, completely moved away and told no one. Yeah, that is it. The fact that you've managed to get rid of coke, meth and pills is an absolute inspiration. Like, that is huge. And yeah, I do think I had to go through the same process. I had to have a full life change. And I think it's really hard thing to accept that when you realise that the only way I'm going to really get sober is by completely changing my life, is quite a scary position to be in. And if you're not quite ready to face that, when you start to get sober, you'll start to notice a lot of that stuff goes away. But it is, because if you think about it, a lot of the times when we're struggling in addiction, what you'll find is you don't have a very good relationship with yourself. I would say a lot of people who struggle with addiction don't love themselves. And to successfully quit addiction, we have to start to love ourselves. And what you'll find when you start to love yourself is a lot of the things in your environment don't reflect self-love. They reflect self-abandonment, because we are abandoning ourselves if we're struggling with addiction. Like, that is an honest conversation with ourselves. And if you have the conversation of, am I loving myself, you'll find out probably not. So a lot of the friends in your life or situations will reflect that. And then you have to have the honest conversation of, well, if I start to love myself, then I'm going to put my recovery first. And are these things helpful to my recovery, or are they driving the addiction? And most of the time you'll find they're not helpful. Right, I'm really tired, guys. I find it quite intense answering all these questions and talking a lot. So I'm gonna answer another 3 questions, but if anyone's said something I haven't replied, just comment it on any of my content, any of my shorts or lives, and I really do try to answer every question. But yeah, I'm gonna just dot around and pick 3 comments at random. If anybody hasn't subscribed or liked, please do that. That's so helpful for us. But if not, just thanks for showing up. Nathan, the whole world is in a chokehold. They've got us in a pickle, 100%. It's just like mass slavery, isn't it, really? Like, if you think of it, and I try not to, because it's not great for me mind. But I always think, like, consumerism is kind of like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to tell everybody that they need to buy everything. And we're going to tell everybody that they're not good enough how they are, and they'll only be good if they spend X amount of money on X amount of things. And then we're going to constantly up the ante so they never feel good enough. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, you have to go to work to get money to pay for this stuff. But the majority of people, we're not going to pay enough money. So we're going to tell you that you need to be able to buy this, but we're only going to give you this amount of money. And we're also going to scare you with everything, the news. And it's kind of like, sounds like a master plan. If I was going to rule the world and I needed to keep everyone compliant, that would certainly be a front runner for how I do it. It's clearly working. But yeah, it has got us in a pickle. And how do we counteract that if we're feeling that way? Well, one of the things that they want us to do is believe that that we're going to be in a state of fight or flight, because then we're much easier to control. So I would work on anxiety. And the second thing I'd do is work on loving yourself, because somebody who loves themselves to a huge amount isn't going to sit there and say, actually, yeah, I'm going to buy all this stuff because I'm not good enough. Because you'll think you're good enough. You won't need to buy this stuff. And if you love yourself, you're going to think, well, actually, I only have one life, so I'm not going to work in this BS job, getting BS amount of pay. I'm going to actually do something that I enjoy. So, yeah, they do have us in a chokehold, but as somebody who does jiu-jitsu, you can get out of chokeholds. You just need to learn how. Right, that's just my thought anyways. I'm getting political here, and I shouldn't be. But yeah, right. VJ, sugar, haha, but it's true. Trying to give up sugar for a month and you start getting side effects like lightheadedness, yeah. VG, did you give up carbs as well? Because I thought that was because I gave up carbs, because I literally cut sugar out of my life and started getting dizzy and really unwell. And then I realised I went to a dietitian and I realised it's because I'd cut out carbs, but I didn't know that just happens off cutting out sugar altogether. Or did you cut out carbs as well? Because now I have to have sugar in my diet. I've just got to be careful how. Bulldog, I'm a veteran, but yeah, I'm one who would rather give than receive. If I can make 2 out of my 20 homeless smile, I've done my job. I deal with me, lass. It's who I am, how I am. It's me. I help others before me. I really get that. But you know what, Bulldog? I used to really be like that. And do you know what I found? If I help myself, then I'm actually in a much better space to show up for people even more. It's like put your own oxygen mask on before you help the other person. And I'm not saying that helping other people isn't great, but also, like, let's help you, or let other people help you, because I think that's such an amazing outlook that you've got to have, is to help other people. And you know what it is? I absolutely do think the homeless people deserve to be made to smile. And I always sit down and talk to homeless people when I've got the time, and buy them a coffee or whatever, or give them money for drugs, because I think if I was homeless, I'd probably want to be off my face. So I know people say don't do that, but I'm like, absolutely, I wanted to be off me nut when I wasn't homeless, let alone if I was. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. But I also think that we need to put our own oxygen mask on, and yeah, if I can help you in any way do that, please let us know and lean on us. Right, last comment, guys. I'm going to go to the bottom. Disulafram antibuse was my answer for alcoholism. If you drink alcohol whilst on the medication, you end up in the hospital, so it's a major deterrent. Yeah, so somebody was actually talking about that. Who was I talking about that yesterday? Someone. So yeah, there's one of the things is I was so terrified to reach out for support for my addiction. But if we can get brave enough to reach out for support, there are certain medications that can help you. So there's certain medications which can help you come off benzos. Roxy, my moderator, was talking to us about that today. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but for pain management, there is for heroin and opiates. There's also for alcohol. So what Bits of Skin is talking about is there's a type of medication you can get for alcohol which actually makes you feel unwell every time you have it. Is that right? I thought it actually just blocked the impact of it, but you're explaining it makes you feel unwell. So there's types of medication which can help you get off addiction. So leaning into services can be really helpful. I think that just sometimes what services lacking is the fact that we need to deal with the self-love that we're lacking underneath. And that's an inside job. That's something that you can do. So we could use the medication and then also learn how to love ourselves and then eventually deal with the root cause. But yeah, I'm really glad that's helped you. And anybody who's struggling with alcohol addiction, please do get in touch with services. There is pills which can help you. Saffron said, I'll give you some support, take out the nose ring. I got my nose ring. So I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again if anyone's listening. So I used to really struggle with self-worth. I used to be so cruel to myself about the way that I looked. And I genuinely think it was because we grow up in consumerism, being told as women and even men now that we're not good enough looking, we need to look a certain way. And I used to body shame myself, and I used to put my nose down, and I didn't like certain features. My nose was my worst. And when I went on my self-love journey, which took a long time of day in, day out, being kind to myself, I got to the point where I didn't care. So I actually got my nose pierced to draw attention to my nose that I don't like. It was an act of self-love. Because I just thought, do you know what it is? I love myself so much that I'm actually willing to draw attention to my nose when I used to feel ashamed of it. So yeah, I'm not taking my nose out. But I don't mind if you want to agree first. Each their own. Not being funny, but what's your name? I can't remember who said the thing about my nose ring. I think it might be separate. No offence, but I didn't get my nose pierced for you, so. Right, Bulldog. Ashley, thank you. You're an amazing lady. Never forget that. God bless you. Right back at you, Bulldog. Right back at you. And right back at to everybody who's going through addiction recovery, and just everybody every single person is a beautiful human being, and I think we forget just how amazing we all are. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. And Seraphim, yeah, hypocritical name, by the way. I don't even know how you say it. I'm dyslexic, guys. But yeah, oh, Math, you're so pretty. Thank you. Thank you. I've got to a place where I actually feel beautiful in my own skin. I started learning to not hate myself, and then I've unfortunately learned to love myself, so people can say whatever they want to us now, and I'm just like, whatever. Whatever. Right, see you later. Thanks, Roxy, for helping moderate. You've been amazing. If anyone could subscribe, that would be great. I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. GMT time. And if I've missed any of your comments, I'm so sorry. Just comment on any of my content. I'll get a little notification and I will do my best to reply. And I'll speak to you soon. Bulldog was your nickname in the army. It's me. Absolute bulldog. I had bulldog. I love bulldogs. Anyways, see you later. Bye.